following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Well, it was a windy week in the Steel City, gentlemen, as we have a calm day for once on the Duke's Court podcast this week. I'm here with Chris, the Skull Crutcher Fletcher, Gary, Sky Bully. You're the Sky Bully this week. You were going to be Sexual Chocolate. I didn't know if that was a good one to start out with, but we'll call you the Sky Bully this week.
I think I'd much rather. I think there's a better bet on the Sky Bully, to tell you the truth, anymore.
All right. We'll do that. And I'm going to be called Dave Rooster Finoli. And I'm just going to keep that comment in. Anyways, gentlemen, how are you?
All right. How are you, David?
Good. Fletcher, you got any headwear on tonight?
Well, the wind did wreak havoc with my phantom hair, so I'm glad to see that it's over.
Well, gentlemen, today marks the 40th anniversary of what?
Well, the greatest sports moment of all time, maybe, perhaps?
No. It's the 39th anniversary of the greatest sports moment.
Oh, I lost it by 1 year.
78 or 79. I'm trying to think, what could that possibly be?
It's a hockey moment.
What is it?
It's a famed hockey moment.
Oh, I'm going to guess Miracle on Ice.
No. See, he guessed that, and I said it was 39 years. Come on here.
Yeah. All right. Well,
come on, Sexual Chocolate.
Coming off with that one a little bit.
It's the day the movie Slapshot was released.
Oh, that's right.
Hey.
You know what? Yeah, that's a good point.
I was going to call you the Hanson brothers, but that's not like a nickname.
Well, I feel the need now to go to the penalty box and feel shame after mixing that.
But yesterday was the 39th anniversary, and this is the one event that we don't need to go by 5 and 10 years to properly celebrate. 39th anniversary of the greatest sports week of all time. It was the end of it yesterday when they won the gold medal in a game where Herbie Brooks told them they were gonna do what if they lost the game?
Take it to their fucking grave. Take it to their fucking grave.
That's right. One of the greatest speeches of all time. Oh, man.
He was a salty man, was he not?
He was very salty, which I get the sense you're a little on the salty side
tonight. I am salty tonight.
Oh, man. Oh, well, the chicken fins. I guess they weren't chicken. Were the Finns as chicken as the Swedes in the day?
I think they were.
There was that talk. There was talk about that particularly in WHA, and then Bobby Hull contested it. I think both Swedes and Finns, but yeah, they were considered to be similar chickens.
So that part of the world is just chicken. Mm-hmm. Are we making that statement?
I stand by my earlier statement. Yes, I do.
All right. Well, it is the thing. It was what an incredible week. I mean, I remember not being excited at all. They got their butts kicked 10-3 by the Soviets early on. And one of my, probably my two great moments, other than the Miracle of Ice, took place in the first game. They were struggling. They were playing the Chicken Swedes and Chicken Pelle Lindbergh, who controversially, they thought he had the American flag for years draped over Jim Craig. Was found out it was another. Apparently Jim Craig was given two flags that day. Gave one to Pelle Lindbergh, but they found the one that he was draped on. But I digress. They were losing 2-1 as time was running out in that game. Pulled the goalie, and do you remember the guy who scored the goal to tie the game?
I do not.
It was Bill Baker.
A couple guys on that team.
Bill Baker.
Christian, maybe.
Bill Baker.
Okay.
Bill Baker scored the goal with time running out to tie that one up. And then when you started believing something could happen, the Czechs were probably the second best team in the world. I mean, they'd get their ass kicked by the Soviets too, but they were the only ones that could at least somewhat skate with them. And the U.S. comes out, back and forth first period, where they end up tying the game. The Stasny brother, I think it was Marion, tied the game at 2 late in the first period. You didn't have a lot of hope, and then just something burst out of the United States. They scored 5 straight goals to go up 7-2 and a 7-3 victory. At that point in time, to me, that was the game that gave them the confidence that maybe Herb was right. That 9 times, what could have happened 9 times, Fletch?
Oh, they're not winning that game 9 times out of 10, Dave.
But what happened on that night? What happened on that night?
Oh, take us home, buddy. Take us home.
Oh, man.
You got me goosebumping.
Oh.
I mean, the Czechs were...
Tonight, we're the best hockey team in the world. Tonight, we skate with them. Mm-hmm. Tonight, we hit with them. Tonight, you are the greatest hockey team there is. Oh, God. And from people who knew Herb Brooks, they said that was as like I mean, they said Kurt Russell just nailed him. Yeah. He didn't have to do a lot of exaggeration. Well, I made sure this weekend I had met a gentleman that was in broadcasting, and he had every game on DVD that he had sent me. So I made sure I at least got the Soviet Union game and the chicken fin game to get through, and of course ended it with that Miracle on Ice, which, my God, how at the end when he goes into the hall and just burst out crying, how do you keep a dry eye? How do you?
You don't.
Oh, man. Well, now my memory, and then I'm going to flip it to you, Gare, to take us with your memory of that event.
Well,
I made the conscious choice to listen to KDKA. I couldn't wait till the end of it. I couldn't wait till 8 o'clock to see what happened. As you recall, the Soviets kind of blocked ABC from putting the game on live at 8. So it had to be played in the afternoon. Ended about 4 or 5 o'clock because I had just gotten home as I was listening to the end of it on KDK, and I chose to listen to it. I got so fired up. I had a date that night. I went home specifically for a date. And this is how big the event was and how stupid I was, okay? I knew what happened. I knew it was going to be broadcast several times, but I was so pumped up, I called her up, and I told her I was sick, and I couldn't go out. So I could stay at home and watch a broadcast game that I already knew the outcome. I don't know if I deserve...
See nothing wrong with that. See nothing wrong with
for that, or am I...
No.
Is that a sick...
No, I think I would have done the same.
I hope she's not listening today. That would be my comment to that.
I'm thinking she's probably still bitter at me because that was the end of the relationship at that point.
Or she dodged a bullet. There could be that too.
Yeah, that's right.
That could be that. Could be that. You know, I mean, I'm sure Viv suffers having to deal with some of the stuff, but you know, it was to me. How many events can you recall 39 years later and watch how many different times have you watched that game and still got the goosebumps, still get the feeling like, oh, my God, they're not going to win this game. You know they're going to win the game, but it's that dramatic that you get that feeling, you know, oh, my God, if they don't do this. It's the greatest non-baseball movie, non-Field of Dreams movie. I named it number 2 in my list of all-time movies. Gary, what were you doing that night? You were not at Duquesne yet.
No, you know, I can't remember. Was it a weeknight? Was it like a Tuesday?
It was a Friday night.
It was a Friday night. Okay, that's why. Because I was playing high school basketball, and the game started. They didn't change it. Our game started at, I think it was 6 o'clock. I guess that would have been. I was a senior. Yeah, I guess it started at 6 o'clock. I don't remember who we were playing, but I was pretty interested in hockey then too. We played a game. My dad comes and picks me up, and we I saw I missed the first of the tape delay. I think I missed the first 5 minutes or so. Of course, we got home, we put it right on. We didn't know the outcome. Or if my dad knew it, he didn't say anything. But I remember him and I watching it together.
But what was his reaction?
Well, I was stunned. I was stunned, quite frankly, at a number of things during the game more than I was. I mean, the Americans, you're right, Dave. I mean, Czechoslovakia had not just the Stastnys, but had a couple other players, and they were pretty much considered on equal par at times by some experts in hockey at that time as the Russians were. It's just they didn't make the trips over here, and they weren't marketed as well, quite frankly. But when the United States killed them, I thought, Brooks has something here, and it was one of those things that you notice in hockey now, and you still notice like their conditioning was just so much better. They ran Czechoslovakia out of the building once they got the wave going. And it was like, wow. And I remember thinking about that. And then they cleaned up 3 other opponents. I can remember Norway was one of them. I don't remember who the other one was. It might have been Germany or somebody. And all of a sudden now they're 4-0-1. So all of a sudden you're on a roll. It's only a 2-week tournament. And I remember thinking, I don't know if they got a chance to beat them, but they're certainly playing a lot better this Olympic tournament than they had in some of at least the one previous one that I had seen. But the Soviets killed everybody. I remember you'd look at the scores. It was like 15-0 and 12-1, and they were killing everybody. And it just seemed near damn impossible. And nobody really knew anything about Herb Brooks at that time, or even some of those players. People didn't pay attention to college hockey and some of that stuff in those days, like anywhere near that they do today. But I think the biggest thing that sticks out to me was the fact that goal at the end of the first period that Mark Johnson, ironically, came to Pittsburgh, got. The first period had a lot of shifting tides in it, and Craig was very good, I remember. He made a number of big stops to keep his team in the game. And, Tretiak just seemed a little shook. I can't remember who fired a big shot from the blue line, but kind of fumbled it, and Johnson got the rebound. He poked it past him. And then the period ended, and they weren't quite sure it was a goal or not. They didn't have all the replay and stuff in those days, but then they awarded it to so here you have, the baddest team in the world that's tied after one period. And then I was stunned when he pulled Tretiak. I had seen Michigan play for not the Red Army, but Dynamo in Hershey, and he was a little guy, real athletic, real quick. But what in the hell would you do that for? He played right into. Even if he thought Tretiak was a little shaky, why would you take the best goaltender in the world, some people thought at that time, and yank him? You almost played right into the United States' hands. But it seemed like it worked for a bit because I remember in the second period they were all over the U.S. Yeah. And again, Craig stood pretty tall and kept the game close. But then, when you got to that third period, when they got the tying goal, then you start to think, oh, my God, this is going to happen. And I think, the thing I remember was my dad and I was pretty much silence. We couldn't believe what we were seeing a little bit. Some of those guys were a little bit well-known, like, Mark Johnson and Dave Christian, some of those guys, but not this well-known. And then I remember Michaels counting it down. Basically just screaming at the end, like 10-9 or whatever. I think it was Ken Morrow had the puck and was carrying it up kind of through the neutral zone. And then the place just erupted. The TV was shaking. So, yeah. But I still cannot figure out. That Red Army documentary that's out there that you and I have talked about, Dave, kind of told a little bit of the tale here, I think. Mm-hmm. These guys were well drilled, and I had never seen some of the drills and stuff when I had seen them in Hershey, Pennsylvania, when they came in for some exhibition games and stuff against the AHL. I hadn't seen any NHL games with the Russians, but, their drills were amazing. They didn't say one word. They never looked at each other. They'd throw the puck across the ice and would perfectly connect on a stick. It was like click, 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 complete silence for the 10-minute warm-up. And, right. Here you have a bunch of college kids come in there, even though they get on a roll and end up beating them. But I just think Tikhonov, I don't know, I just can't, I still cannot figure out exactly what he must have been thinking there. It wasn't like Tretiak was awful. But once that goal went in at the end of the first period, he makes a move that basically, I don't want to say sends up a white flag, but it certainly gave the Americans life. And can you imagine being on the American bench and you look down there and you say, wait a minute, why is Tretiak sitting on the bench? And, they never said anything. They were very close, connected, tight, never really figured it out. But I still don't think some of those guys on that Russian team could explain that. And I honestly think it gave the Americans enough life that they ended up, pulling off the victory. So, and I think the only other memory I think about sometimes is hockey back then. Maybe in Pittsburgh is a little bit different, but hockey back then, at least in central Pennsylvania, not in Philadelphia so much, but in central Pennsylvania was a game that was really, really a cult sport. You rarely had anybody talking about it. But with everything else that was going on in the world at that time, with, I guess it was, Iran and Afghanistan and all that kind of stuff, I mean, there was really a groundswell around this. And I just remember it's people, you go to a convenience store or going to buy a paper or something, the people were talking about, the potential hockey game that night, or just the fact that the Americans could win the gold medal. Most people don't remember that wasn't the gold medal game. That just got them to the point that they had to win the next one to wrap it up. And if they wouldn't have, the Soviets would have won the gold medal anyway, because I think in those days they did a little bit differently than they do it today. But I just remember more people talking about the game that really didn't know anything about it, really didn't pay any attention to it than I'd ever recalled. And honestly, there for a while afterwards. I mean, even with as great as those Oiler teams were in the NHL and the Islanders and stuff like that, it didn't get the attention that Olympic tournament did and that victory by the United States did. So that's what I recall. But I don't know, if you're in a tight game with an underdog that's feeling it in an 8,500 seat building with the whole country kind of looking down on you, just you 20 guys on the ice, what are you doing pulling what some people thought was the best goaltender in the world? I mean, I couldn't imagine making a dumber move than that. And Tikhonov never explained it.
If a team never plays a close game and they're in a close game, you freak out. That's a huge advantage.
Yep.
You and I have talked about that.
You don't pull the goalie. He never pulled the goalie.
Yeah, you never pull it. I mean, he kind of choked there.
Well,
but he also, guys, keep in mind that he was in the hospital for 2 days before that too. He had a bad fever. He was sick, so maybe that entered into that whole thing too.
Maybe. I mean, we don't know those things. In those days, there certainly wasn't the coverage that there was today, going to the practices and stuff. But I mean, it's funny, Dave. You and me have talked about this, and I don't know, maybe I've talked about this on this show. It's funny with a lot of these Eastern Bloc prize fighters, even the Klitschko's for a while. It's true. I mean, in those countries, they're so drilled, it's almost personalities taken out, even mental preparations taken out, particularly in those days, that when you get a shifting tide or you get a situation you're not used to, there is a tendency to panic. Front runners, they call them in boxing. And it's shown in boxing time and time again. And I think there's even some of these Eastern Bloc fighters that are now, there's going to be a question about that. So it could very well be that. I mean, I think when you're beating people 16-1, and even though, they didn't speak English, a lot of them had English interpreters, they're reading their own press clippings and stuff like that. That could very well have been part of it too. They were stunned they were in that position, and panic set in a little bit. Absolutely. But I mean, to me, it just gave them fuel. They had enough fuel with Johnson's goal late, somewhat disputed at the end of the period, and playing him pretty even, other than Craig standing on his head. And then to do that at that time, even if he was sick or something, I mean, to me, it just seems. I don't know. It just seems like to me it was a psychological move that ended up giving the building and the team a lot more life than it probably should have.
Great, one of the great goals I've ever seen. And then Fletch, they're losing the gold medal game. What happened? What happened at that point?
You'll take it to your fucking grave. One of the great speeches of all time.
It is.
That's all he said. I met Mike Caruso at a charity event. And he Mike, here's the thing. I mean, here's a guy who decided after that nothing was ever going to be as good as this, and he never played in the NHL. Whether he would have been a quality NHL player or not, it doesn't matter. He decided that's not where he was going to go. And to me, the other thing I remember is just the whole build-up to this game. And, Gary, you're right. I mean, people who didn't give a rat's ass about hockey all of a sudden really liked it. And I think about that telegram that one woman sent, and it was pinned up on the bulletin board that said, "Beat those commie bastards." And that's really it was about. I mean, this was the thing that America was not feeling really good about itself, and they all got behind these college kids, and it was really an amazing thing. And here's the thing: this is the stat that'll blow you away. Gary, you mentioned how the Soviets were so dominant. Since the U.S. had upset them in 1960, So they took home the next 4 gold medals. They went 27-1-1 in Olympic competition. They outscored their opponents 175 to 44. So when you think about that, and the fact, Dave, like you said, 10-3, they beat the same team 10 days before that, and they beat the crap out of an NHL All-Star team. They beat them 6-0.
Yep.
So that was pretty amazing. I remember watching with my family. My grandmother was not a sports fan at all, but she was all in on this game. And just watching it and having it around the dinner table and watching this thing and watching this whole tournament, it was really just an amazing moment. And, you know, we mentioned Al Michaels and his call. You realize, guys, that was one of the first hockey games he ever called.
Yeah.
And to be able to do something like that is just amazing.
Yeah. He could have been like a bit player on the broadcasting scene if the U.S. loses that game.
Yeah,
think about
I
what
agree,
that did for his
100%.
career.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly helped.
And think about this. Think about that Mike Eruzione goal. He shot it off the wrong foot. It was an awkward shot that just sort of snuck in there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a
I
guy
love what
who
he says, an inch to the right, and I'm painting fences for my life.
Exactly. And this is a guy who barely managed to hold on to the team, making the team. But, you know, it was, you know, the fact that Herb Brooks was able to take all these guys, and particularly, you know, at the time, there's a lot of different divisions within college hockey. That there were Minnesota guys, there were Boston guys, and he was able to get them all to work together like that. And you're right, Gary, they were well conditioned. They outskated everybody.
Yeah. Who do you play for?
Oh.
That's one of the best scenes of the movie. Finally, Eruzione says it. Right.
I play for the United States of America.
Right.
Oh, you know what? I'm watching that movie as soon as this podcast is over, fellas. I'm fired up now.
Oh,
I may not sleep tonight. I'm salty and fired up.
How do you sleep? That's the other thing I remember. I remember not being able to get to sleep that night. I was so fired up. And I remember making sure I was back. It was at 10 in the morning was the gold medal game. And making sure I was up at Duquesne and everybody was in the Assumption Hall lounge. It was just a wild scene. It was a wild scene that day. That was probably next to the probably more than the Dave Roberts choke game that year. That was my fondest memory at Duquesne was being up there with the guys on the wing to watch that gold medal game.
Well, do you guys remember what happened 1 year after that?
That what happened?
There was a made-for-TV movie.
Oh, with the
Miracle on Ice, starring Steve Guttenberg as Jim Craig and Carl Malden as Herb Brooks.
Herb Brooks. I just watched that last year, just to see what I found it on YouTube, and I watched it just to see what it was like, and it's bad. It's a bad movie, but you still get pumped up.
Steve freaking Guttenberg. We couldn't do better than that.
You know, Disney did a wonderful thing by getting no-name guys to act in that and play hockey.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the one ended up, on Friends with the Jennifer Aniston character's boyfriend.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
The Jim Craig guy, the guy who played Craig in the Miracle.
Yeah.
Nice.
You're right.
There's your fact. There's your fact of the
trivia, man. I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
So.
And you know that the rink is now the Herb Brooks Arena.
Yeah. And they have a little memorial thing in there. Not memorial, but a little Hall of Fame of the 80 team inside it.
Oh, nice.
It would have to be the coolest damn thing. That's the one thing on my little list of things I want is the United States hockey.
Can I tell you guys my biggest sports regret?
Yeah.
And, you know, we all have our sports rooms, right? We all have our man caves with memorabilia and stuff in it.
Absolutely.
I played in the Penguins golf tournament one year, And for the silent auction, they had a jersey, a sweater that was autographed by 20 members of that team.
Holy cow!
God, did you win it?
It went for $2,000. I was out at $1,500, and I kicked myself that I didn't keep going.
Oh man, that'd be a 5-digit jersey now at the least.
Yeah, I would think so.
But but here's the thing: it doesn't matter because you'd never sell.
No. Oh, I'd kick your ass if you sold it.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I would deserve an ass whooping on that one.
Oh,
the one thing with the emotions that people have about this, though, is they don't think about the fact that there were 3 guys on that team that had tremendous NHL careers: Neil Broughton, Mike Ramsey, and Dave Christian. I mean, all 3 of those guys were tremendous NHL players. I mean, Christian played.
Don't forget about Kenny Morrow.
I mean, Morrow didn't play as long, but boy, he was a key call.
Yeah, he was a great pro.
Yeah,
and you guys remember being that excited whenever the Penguins signed Mark Johnson and thinking, "Wow, this is great."
Oh, I made sure I had tickets that night. That was in the pre-Stanley Cup days. That was about the wildest I ever saw that arena. Was when he hit the ice.
He was exciting.
After the black and gold when they switched.
Yeah, I mean he could move.
Talk about coming from a hockey family, huh? Wow.
Yeah, I mean that's right. I mean he's Johnson's son, right? That's right. So, I mean he was a very exciting player on a bad team, and he had some injuries which kind of shortened his career. But I mean he was a fun guy to watch.
He was small. Oh, yeah. He was small. That was his problem.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think he was a team captain in Hartford, wasn't he? I think he had a captaincy in Hartford, I think, after he left Pittsburgh. But he was an exciting guy.
Ended up being a hell of a coach.
So, yeah, he coached the women's team for years, didn't he?
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, and he won a lot of titles. So,
yeah.
I mean, but Christian Broughton and Mike Ramsey wasn't particularly exciting, but I mean he was an effective top-line defenseman who could play on the power play or the penalty kill for a lot of teams, including Pittsburgh at the end of his career, and he was a very important player on the teams he was on. And those 3 in particular, nobody knew that at the time because they were kids, but and then you put Johnson, and Jack O'Callahan was a hard hitter too. Dave Silk played on the wing for a couple teams. He was kind of a bigger guy. And I guess Patrick was probably involved in that team to some degree with Brooks at that time. I guess maybe.
No, he was interested, and he wept
like he cried.
On
he
the
cried.
HBO documentary. I got choked up when he did that. Exactly. He was a little wussy boy, but I got choked up when I saw him crying about it.
I mean, I think, with the way Brooks probably was, if you read about Brooks, he kind of had some of that Dick Vermeil kind of, like, different personality, much more intense, but, like, really not thinking about anything else, just completely pouring himself into stuff. And he had a little trouble in the pros because of that, both in New York and Minnesota.
He did.
It's a much longer season. These guys are men now, and they're making quite a bit of money, and you can't drive people like that, I think, in the pro game with that long season and everything else. But you put all that together, and we're trying to mesh all those personalities and just the groundswell that was going on, like we all talked about around it. I mean, it was, it is something that would cause probably some kind of ups and downs in your mind when you're going through it and after and before. But
he was very well respected in the Penguin organization when they brought him on, because he was a hell of a scout for them, and he really, Mario loved him. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of those first hockey families going back to the Pacific Coast Hockey Association days.
Yeah,
it's part of that, and yeah, that's right. And yeah, when he was with Pittsburgh, he was a key cog in some of those teams that in some ways are among the best ever. There's no question about it. So,
but think about this too, that this was a guy who was cut from the 1960 team. He was the last cut. And the only reason he was cut is because Bill Cleary joined that team only if his brother Bob would also be signed to that team. And because of that, Brooks was out.
I mean, and that was one thing they caught in that film so perfectly.
Yep.
Just how that affected him, how that drove him. And his dad apparently was a bit of a dick. And, that's what you need from your family at a time like that, is somebody telling you, they just outworked you.
Yeah.
I always hoped at one point one one of my children would have something bad, so I could look at him and say, "Well, they just outworked you."
Okay.
Been like
should have been a little smarter. He would have worked a little harder. You'd have been better off. That wouldn't have happened. I've heard that kind of thing. So.
Yeah. But, that's parenting 101. I'm thinking.
But you're right. Ken Morrow was a very important player in the last piece of that Islander dynasty. He was a big, long guy who took up a lot of space. He replaced Gord Lane, who was a bruiser who really couldn't skate with a lot of teams, and they put Morrow in there, and then they ended up running to 3 more cups. So, I mean, he was a key player in that too. Very, very steady, taking away space. And, but the team was better looking back than anybody realized at the time. And probably was talented enough to pull off a couple upsets. But, I think the groundswell of everything else, and people didn't follow college hockey, as you said, Fletch, in those days. It was really a regional game. Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Boston.
The other person who I thought was underrated in this whole thing was Ken Dryden. Really good color commentary.
He was an excellent announcer.
Smart
he
guy.
Really was.
Yeah.
And, you realize that this is a guy who was running on fumes because, I don't know if you guys realize this, but he was the day before he flew up to Toronto to take the Canadian bar exam. So he had been cramming like crazy for that doing Olympic coverage at the same time.
Wow. How did he do in the Toronto bar?
Well, I don't know. I guess I imagine he passed. And because Ken Dryden didn't fail at anything. I mean, he still went. His goals against average, what was it, like 1.12 that one year or something like that? It was like Bob Gibson-esque.
It was Bob Gibson-esque. And he wrote a hell of a book. He was the Jim Bouton of hockey.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
He wrote a hell of a book. It wasn't, you didn't hear about shit pies in it, but it was a hell of a book nonetheless.
Is the game, I think it's called, Is it the game? I think. I mean, I can take and leave him. I mean, he is a very intelligent guy. There's no question about it. And I think, coming up as a rookie in that 1971 season, and on those Canadian teams, he was somebody that nobody really talked about, but was really a dominant force on a number of those great Canadian teams.
But I thought he was a good broadcaster. I thought he brought a nice sort of solid, calm counterpoint to Michaels. I thought it was a good pairing.
Rick, thinking back, you're right, and I think he actually did a few NHL games too after that. I agree. He's an intelligent guy, and he did the parts of the game that I think are the best, where he talks about like strategically and why the Canadians were so good beyond just the skills. I agree with that, but he's a little pompous for my taste, particularly when he became an executive. I mean, when he was in Toronto, he never won anything, but he always seemed to have an opinion on how you should do things. And now he's got this thing with the concussion stuff, which I think is an issue, but it's also the game that enriched him and put him on the planet. So, I mean, you certainly can change your spots and stuff, but I mean, he seems to be a little bit of he's a little holier than thou to me, but you're right. As a broadcaster, he was very intelligent.
He was a great
saw the game really well. And the way he wrote about it, I think, taught a lot of people more about the game than just about any other book. I think.
Highly intelligent guy. But just imagine if you're Al Michaels in the booth that night, and just thinking this is a shit assignment, because it was. I mean, it was a shit assignment because you thought you were going to get your ass kicked, and at that point in time, nobody's going to watch. Yeah. And to just imagine what's going on, and imagine to yourself, oh my God, I can't believe, I'm announcing this. I mean, he had to just be in heaven. I that was always one of my favorite
feeling of
things.
The changing environment inside the building as the games, and the game had a lot of shifting tides too. I mean, you talk about a cold sweat. I mean, the Soviets killed them in the second period, but Craig was. I
thought the game was done in the second period. I thought the game was done in the second period.
Right.
Well, here's the other thing, guys. Keep in mind that ABC also they cut some of that game because they were cut from time because they had some women's ski slalom. Is that the other event that was on? There's some other ski event, like a minor ski event, and they had to get coverage for that. So they were cutting out minutes of the game.
Well, that
Liechtenstein was a power in skiing back then, I tell you.
Yeah. But that speaks to Dave's point. They didn't think it was going to be that competitive. Or at least not as competitive as it was. So, but it must have been in a small building. That's not the Civic Arena or even the Spectrum. You're talking about the Lake Placid Ice Center. I think it was probably 7,000 people, too. That's another thing. Can you imagine how intimate it was? And then,
that's one thing in the documentary on HBO. I remember Michael saying that's when sound had feel. Mm-hmm. He said he'd never been anywhere remotely as loud as that.
I'm sure as it built, and particularly in the third period when they tied it and you could see the tide changing, I'm sure it was just unbelievable. I mean, I'm sure. Heart pumping.
What was with the ice on that place, too? It looked like it was dirty ice. You look at the replays of that.
Yep. Again, they're not anticipating what's going to happen. I mean, remember, hockey at this level, I mean, college hockey stunk. People didn't pay attention because it was bad.
Right.
Everything was in the juniors. I mean, it was rare that Americans would come out and be of any worth. So, I mean, to me, the hockey tournament was as interesting as the softball, women's softball tournament was, where the United States would just kick everybody's ass, or as interesting as dream teams are in basketball now, which, it kind of loses its luster when everybody
but the first one was special, Dave. The first one was special.
The first one was, but, I mean, you don't expect what happened. I mean, it's hard to describe to myself what kind of upset this was, much less to look at my children and describe it, because they look at me like I'm nuts every time I talk about this game, and I get so fired up.
But they don't all know all the factors you're talking about and all the stuff that was going on in the world at that time, as Fletch said. You had to kind of be there for that one, for some of that stuff. Like now Russians and Czechs and all that are part of the NHL and even part of junior teams and college teams. Back then that was not the case. The wall hadn't come down, and there was there was a few of them got in the WHA. They had just reinstituted the draft registration not long before the Olympics.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I remember doing that.
The other thing, guys, the thing that's beautiful about is that we sometimes forget about the Olympic hockey game is how beautiful it is because of the size of the rink. And just the speed and everything that it's just I love the Olympic game. Even with the pro players, and to me it's kind of taken some of that out, but just the size of the rink and the skating that it requires, and the fact that U.S. team just outskated everybody.
The movie portrayed that well, I thought, beyond just what team do you play for, but he knew that and honestly today, that theory continues into the NHL today. I mean, if you notice, a lot of games are won by the better teams as you get in that last 10, 12 minutes. And, back in the 70s, the NHL, similar to the way the NBA and the ABA was, the NHL was kind of a little bit, the Flyers in particular were big, bruising, plodding teams that just kind of beat you into submission, a lot of stuff on the backboards. They weren't skating, bust your butt every shift kind of teams. The Bruins weren't either. And the Canadians were, I guess, to some degree, because they had a lot of those French Canadians who could really skate, and they played that way. But that was not necessarily the norm in pro hockey at that time. And Brooks knew that, that was going to be the difference. If they were going to be able to compete with these teams, particularly some of the better international teams, that's what they were going to have to do. And on the bigger ice as well, you could do it. And he took advantage of it. And a lot of those games, they were the better team as it wore on, including that gold medal game. And that theory has continued into the NHL today.
And the other part of it is they often fell behind in those games.
Yep.
And they came back.
Yep.
They came back.
Yep.
They came back. And, I mean, that reminds me of just how irritable I used to get at the Boston Garden ice, which was, if I'm not mistaken, the smallest.
Oh, yeah, it was tiny.
It was a joke.
It was.
Absolute joke.
Yep.
But
Bobby Orr made it look big, let me tell you that.
He did. He did, my friend. He certainly did.
It's funny, guys, when people talk about the greats and they say, well, Lemieux, they say Gretzky, then Lemieux, and Gordie Howe. To me, Bobby Orr's got to be up there, even though his knees were shot after a while. Just what he did, it was just beautiful to watch. And you could still see the picture of him flying in the air, scoring that goal.
Mm-hmm. And he did that before the game loosened up.
Yes.
That's right.
He did that during a very tough time. I think, to me, Orr is the only one that can compete with Gretzky for pure impact.
Yeah.
As far as the greatest players of all time. I think.
But I'll tell you what, there's something about an end-to-end rush that he would do. That would just it would just send you chills seeing that.
I'm going to say Gordie Howe is overrated. I'm making that statement now. I know somebody's going to come and find me and kick my ass.
Well, then they get a Gordie Howe hat trick for beating your ass, and then.
Hockey people always love the guy who can score the goal and fight, and that's, I think, his reputation, I think, played a lot of years, which is why some of his statistics are up there. But you read anything about him, he was one of the nastiest, meanest, strongest guys in the league, but he could also beat you.
And he did it with a flat stick, fellas.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are so many things he didn't have, and he changed the game. He changed the game. In fact, maybe they don't change the game in the 80s the way they do without Bobby Orr leading the way.
Oh, I think it's clearly a factor in the way Edmonton thought about it, and when they drafted Coffey, I think clearly it was a factor. Just getting everybody activated on the ice was not something you saw a lot of, even in cup-winning teams.
But having a defenseman score 100 points, that was unheard of.
It really was. Oh. It really was.
Never forget Coffey's first game as a Penguin. I had never seen that kind of speed live before, and it just blows you away. It's a factor that certainly, the anti Ron Stackhouse.
Oh.
Stackhouse a good shot, not a fast skater.
No,
by any stretch.
Plotting, yeah.
But,
Coffey scored 46 one year, I think, didn't he? I have to look it up, but I think he scored 46 one of those years. So it was kind of an Orr type of season. His supporting cast was sensational. But, I think Orr changed the game more than anybody, even including Gretzky, really. I mean, Gretzky might have been more dominant, but Orr changed the game. I'm not sure Gretzky.
I agree with you.
So,
I agree with you. He's certainly a factor.
Yeah.
Oh, my. But, anyways, we're going to move on to our big stories of the week. Mr. Fletch.
Well, I'm going to use a term that I don't know whether we want to call it Tuggate or whether we want to call it the rub and tug, whether we want to call it Inflategate, whatever it is. But Robert Kraft getting nailed for prostitution allegations.
Wow!
And on the day of the AFC Championship game.
So he goes to Florida to get his rub and tug.
Yeah, what was he in Florida?
He flies to New England.
He was played where? In Kansas City, right?
Or Kansas City, I'm sorry, yes.
Man, what was he doing in Florida anyway? I mean, it's weird. I don't get it.
Well, we know what he was doing in Florida, Gary.
I know, but what was he doing there that day?
I'll tell you.
Guess he's got his own jet.
It's a question that doesn't have to be asked.
Yeah, it was his own jet, I guess.
You know who the only happiest guy in the NFL was on this? Art Rooney Jr. because he didn't have to endure any news cycle with AB or Le'Veon at this point.
Well, this whole thing's going to be really interesting because this is one of the most powerful of the NFL owners. He sits on a lot of the main committees, and the NFL has said that they hold owners to a higher standard than the players. So when Irsay was had the drunk driving thing, he was fined $500,000 and had a 6-game suspension. So with this one, I mean, they're really looking at trying to get rid of human trafficking. So that's part of this whole sting part that he got caught in. But here's the question I have: what they do with the penalty on this? Because you have the guy taking the knee, who is basically ostracized from the league. Here's a guy who's done a crime, allegedly, and there's a chance, guys, that he may be forced to get out of the league. I mean, you look at it this way. I mean, who was it? It was the Carolina Panthers owner, Jerry Richardson. They forced him out after sexual harassment allegations.
I can't remember what he did.
This wasn't your $2 ladies at the bottom of Forbes Avenue. I mean, this is supposedly a nasty human trafficking situation. So this goes beyond just getting a hooker.
I could see a scenario where he's forced out.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Well, the league's got a lot of bad press and continues to get it, and it comes at a time where, this is the last thing on top of everything else the league suffered through with his bum Lloyd practically killing that woman and Jones putting him on the Cowboys and some of the other stuff that goes on, and the league still can't live down the fact that that one stretch, 5-21 had a serious criminal record that were wearing a uniform. I mean, the league's got a lot of PR problems.
Yeah, but to get him out, I think it would require something like 23 or 24 votes. But what they may do is they may force him to hand over operations to the son and get him out. I mean, I don't know how he survives it.
I chuckle at the only chuckleable thing about this is that he denies it. It's on, the police officer when somebody said something. Right. We got you on tape. What are you denying here? You thought you were paying her for Girl Scout cookies?
Yeah, she accidentally just decided to help you out there.
Well, she was grateful to get a razor or something. I don't know, a Gillette razor. Who knows?
I think some of these guys they've had such a degree of success, like some of the stuff that comes out of his mouth. I hate to say it, even Brady and stuff. It looks like pure delusion. I guess there's that kind of egomaniac involved here. But you're right, Dave. What the hell are you denying? It's on tape for a sting operation that's been going on in Palm Beach County for a year.
So here's the other thing, guys. Do you, as the league, do you still have the Patriots have your opening game, or do you maybe schedule some other game?
Actually, they're going to, and this was before this, they're going to the Packers-Bears to celebrate the 100th anniversary.
Oh,
that's going to be the Thursday night game.
Okay.
They're going to do a special
convenient
thing. Yeah. Well, just in case somebody gets in a rub and tug situation, let's do this.
So have we named it? Is it Tuggate? Do we want to go with Tuggate, or what do we want to go with here?
Tuggate. Let's go with Tuggate. I like that. It made me laugh when you did that on Facebook. I officially dub it that.
I guess you just lose your mind, I guess. The guys should know that the league, a lot of people in the league don't like the organization. It's probably some jealousy. They have been winning. I think they have broken the rules frequently, and I think the league has turned a blind eye to it often. But they still are talented. They're still drafting well. They still know how to put together a winning organization. So, filling up footballs a little less only goes so far. But
how
you wonder what's in the guy's head.
As a billionaire to go out to Florida to pay for sex.
It's pretty bizarre. That's what I mean. You wonder what's in the head. Does he need to do this? Probably not.
Well, here's what I think a couple of things. One, when you're that entitled, you don't think like that.
Well, that's what I think.
Secondly, if you're in that position too, you don't want anything that's going to come back and possibly be complicated. So the thought is, if I can get away with it, here it is. Boom, I'm gone. But it's gonna be really interesting to see how some of the other power brokers in the league pick this, because we all know that Jerry Jones was not a Goodell fan in this last contract.
Yep.
So, and how is Jerry Jones going to react in all of this?
Don't forget, there's been a report that they've been some people have been talking to Adam Silver.
Right. I heard that.
So.
A lot of them have skeletons in their closet, these NFL owners.
Well, yeah, but Kraft was also for many years, until the Brady suspension, was a big Goodell supporter, always in his corner.
It's true.
So
I think
it's going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah, they're going to have to deal with it. I think they're going to have to deal with it somewhat decisively. It may not go to the extreme that you say, Fletch, although I hear the possibility clearly. I haven't thought it through that far, but you're right. But I think they got to start dealing with some of this stuff a little more decisively because, I think, I don't know, we got together with some of Patty's friends, and these guys are Pittsburgh guys like you guys, and they've watched football for years, and they're a lot more turned off, not just because of the big mouth of, these two that thank God they're gone, in my view. Get back to the Pittsburgh Steelers class organization again, but But I mean, they're more turned off by some of the stuff, some of the stuff that's going on than I realized. I mean, I don't think about football as a primary sport for myself, but a lot of people are turned off. So, they talk about all these surveys and this nonsense like Selig used to. Well, if they're taking the surveys, they should know that. So, you got a world where, on the one breath, you're selling a bunch of shirts and stuff that women can wear, and then you can't let this guy get away with doing something like that.
Right.
To both minorities and women that are, there because they're slaves. You can't let this go on. So, and I don't know, if I was Goodell, I'd get him in a room and say, what the hell were you thinking? Like, I mean, are you paying attention?
Right.
Do you ever read the paper? Like, this is going all over the country here. Like, what were you doing?
I just...
And the league did something smart, though, this week, though. They read the tea leaves, they saw what public opinion was, and they paid Kaepernick to make this thing go away. Because there is no way... There is no way they were going to win that case. No
they weren't going to
way.
Win it, and supposedly the lawyer had embarrassing stuff too. I don't put that past what that was about. Also,
yeah, I get the sense there was something there that we didn't see. Yep.
So to me, this was a stupid thing to everybody stand on their flagpole for, and. To do what they did, and what was just stupid. And the shame of it is, he's not a good quarterback.
I don't think he would have had a long career anyway. I agree.
Well, I think he was better than a lot of backup quarterbacks in the league.
But that's the thing. He could have made a team. You're right.
But they didn't do that, and he got a contract that maybe he was in the right place at the right time. And the fact that he was making the money that he did, and then to take that away from him through collusion, they got off lucky. It could have been that hit could have been a lot more.
Probably. Yep.
Although I found it humorous that people were claiming opponents of him. Well, he could have had a job. He was offered a job in the Alliance for $75,000.
Yeah, goodbye.
Why would you do that?
Making more of a speaking engagement.
He was right, although it brings up something we can throw out. I don't know if you guys heard of the Ole Miss situation this week in basketball.
I did not.
Where 8 of their players knelt during the anthem to protest. There was a Confederate rally nearby.
Okay.
And I guess it'd been a little threatening. And in that situation, I'm happy to not hear people criticizing those kids left and right, because in this day and age, to protest keeping the Confederacy alive, it just boggles my mind how that's an issue. And
pretty insane.
Yeah.
Those kids
good for them.
Find a protest, and I'm glad that nobody came after them.
That's insane.
Good for them.
Yeah. But Gary, what do you have on the docket?
I mean, I'm going to go back.
Do you know of anybody who's tugging?
I mean, I wasn't going to pick that one. I think, maybe it's because it's personal, but I had never gone to one of these outdoor games. I had gone to one that had the alumni.
Oh yeah.
But I went to the outdoor game this time, and I would say, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure it's as good as the NHL or the media makes it out to be, but to see 70,000 people there on a rainy night. I mean, this is a hockey town, yes, but
how miserable was that, Gary, sitting out there?
It was good until about 9 o'clock, and then when the third period started, it got a little tough because it was kind of cold, Fletch. It was about 36, and the rain started. It wasn't a pouring rain, but it was kind of like a sheeting kind of a drizzle, but heavier drizzle. It got a little uncomfortable when we left because Patty got just too cold, so I didn't see the finale, thank God. But it was a very interesting event, though. To be in a huge stadium like that, and then you get out there, and this time they put the rink like where the 30 and 30 was to football, right in the center, which was something I hadn't seen. But Lincoln Financial is a good field for football. I mean, the lower level is really low, and honestly, it was kind of pretty damn similar. Where we were lucky enough to be sitting with some season ticket holders we knew, that you could see a lot of the game that was going on. But just to be in that big of a venue and forgetting about all the craziness with the stupid concerts and the, shooting off fireworks, but just the NHL. NHL's come a long way. I kept thinking to myself that you got 70. Some of it's just people just say they want to be there, but I mean, once the game got competitive, and particularly with Simmons' hit, it got a little rough and a little rowdy, and it was quite an environment. It was quite a charged and amazing environment to sit in that. So I guess my moment of the week is I don't think the Stadium Classic's going away. I think it's the Stadium Series or the Winter's Day Classic is going away. I think it is a little bit of a money-making scheme now. I mean, we figured it out. The Flyers actually get 4 more home games out of that with the ticket prices and the fact that you triple the seats.
True.
You get 4 more home games a year, which is why all these teams won it, including Nashville and Dallas and places like that. But the bottom line, it was really a unique event. It's something you do get a chance. You should do it once, I think. And it was really amazing to watch NHL guys, really like a bunch of kids skating up and down an outdoor rink, which has NHL boards and all that kind of stuff and NHL glass. But, I mean, it really was a pretty remarkable experience. So I guess my moment of the week, and maybe it's because I was there and lucky enough to go there, but that would be my moment of the week was the stadium.
Didn't you find that the lower level you were blocked out of a bit of the seeing a bit of?
I mean, we had a hard time seeing. We were on the across from the benches, which we were lucky that way. We had a very good view. We were about 18 rows up, Dave, in the lower level of the football. So I couldn't see the puck on the boards nearest to us. And you couldn't see it really anything other than maybe half behind the goal on the other side. But other than that negative, you could see the flow of the play pretty well. I mean, I would say you'd probably want to be, if you ever get the chance to buy it,
go up top.
Optimally,
we made that mistake 2 years ago, and I ended up watching most of the game on the scoreboard.
It depends on where you are. I mean, some seats are terrible. I think if you were in the ends, terrible. You know, way up high, I don't understand why those people would go way up high like that because it's so far away. You can't even see the rubber, the puck at all. Yeah. But I think if you're about 30 rows up in the lower level, I don't know much about Hines like you guys do. I'm sure I'll get there eventually more. But in Lincoln Financial, the seats are pretty close to the field, and about 30 rows up would have been optimal. In fact, we went up there to try to get out of the rain a little bit, and we were standing, I guess it's 35 rows or 36 rows in the first level of Lincoln Financial. We got up to about row 35. It was perfect. I mean, you could really see everything on the ice. And you could see it fairly well, not as well as in a regular rink, but still an amazing experience with that many.
It's a good experience. I agree. I enjoyed the experience of it.
Yep. I mean, I was
do it again.
Surprised. You know.
Yeah.
So,
but good.
That would be mine.
Well, my big moment of the week is our alma mater, which continues just to blow me away.
Cardiac Kids, boys.
Oh my God! Against George Mason. In their building, tough team, you get down by 19 again. And again, I'm thinking to myself, why am I, because I'm holed up in my office trying to watch this at work. And I did shut it down, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what, these idiots are going to come back. I flip it back on, it's 8 points. This is an incredible season. These are young freshmen and sophomores.
Yep.
And do you realize they have a chance to win 20 games in the regular season for the first time since 1971-72?
That's amazing.
They haven't won 20 games in the regular season.
We were there, too. Yeah.
I mean, my God, this guy, and they have 2 better players coming in next year that they have on the roster here. I think his name is Mike Vukovan. He does... He brings you Pittsburgh Sports Now, which is a great, if you haven't gotten on that before, it's a great great website for Pittsburgh sports, and he covers the
looked at it. It is good. Yeah.
And he makes the comment in there that Keith Dambrot isn't just building a year. He's building a program with these players. He's not just building a good story.
Yep.
And that's what it looks like. I
agree.
You win 3 of the games, you clinch a double bye in the tournament, which if you want to make the NCAA tournament by winning your conference tournament, you need the double bye. So they got 4 tough games coming up. If they win 2 of them, they have St. Bonnie's and UMass, which UMass is a bad team. They have that game at the Palumbo. So hopefully by the next time, and they did this without, Sincere Carey was out of the game. He has reoccurring knee issues, and so your best player was not there. And that, to me, is just a dumbfounding thing. That shows you the depth. It shows you youth. I mean, it's young teams do that. They either go out the big leads and then hang on, or they get blown out at first before they wake up. And once his team matures, it's going to be scary. It's going to be, to me, challenging for at-large bids, which, I never thought I'd see that. But
what about the possibility of them playing in the play-in game? How about that? Yeah,
that would be incredible. I mean, they need to win the tournament this year. I don't think they're going to have enough of a rating, this new net rate that the NCAA is going with. But I think I just think they have every bit of shot at this. I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the league who is dominant over them. I think they have the potential to beat anybody in this league. And with a double bye, this really, really could get interesting. Yeah. They have unlike the Soviets, who, as we talked earlier, didn't know what to do when the games got close. This team seems to know how to win those games, and that's a skill that you can't have enough of.
And I think it's him too. I think when you've got those kind of youth like that, you're right. Falling behind sometimes and just not being ready to go is good. But he seems to pull the right strings and pieces. He gets a combination going. I think conditioning's a factor there too. They're just a lot fresher in those games where they're coming back down the stretch than the opponents are. And I think that's a factor too. I mean, I just hope we can keep him. I mean, I know he's a Pittsburgh guy. I know his dad played there.
Well, he's in his early 60s. I think he's 60. So
yeah,
I think there's a good chance this is it.
I hope he's there.
I mean, if he does well enough and they did get in the tournament, or even if they go to the NIT and win deep, somebody's going to come sniffing around, and we've had that trouble before. But I hope you're right, because he does seem to have it going. I mean, they go 8-9 deep, which I don't remember a Duquesne team doing that since we were there. So, they had some good teams with Tim Alston and stuff in the early 90s, but they were about 7 players. Yeah. Other than that little stretch, they haven't had this kind of talent. So.
And you get a 4-star next year, which I don't remember the last time we've had a 4-star.
I don't either. You're right. It's been a long time.
I mean,
it's been a long time.
Are you on the wagon, Fletch?
All right. Here's the thing. I think I actually may be, and like I said, I actually had this dream, fellas, that they were involved in the play-in game.
Well, I think if they win the tournament, that's where they're going to be. I think they'll get that 11-12 play-in game.
Yeah.
I do think that's exactly your dream will come true. I don't see them getting a lower seed, but I don't see them getting a higher one at that point. I think they'll be around 11-12. But
it's not talked about anymore, but it's something that should be thought about. The NIT doesn't have the cachet or the money or even the attention.
It used to be the one. It used to be the one-true tournament.
Did, but I'm saying, if you look at the past decade, though, particularly with young teams, some of those teams just miss. They were good. I'm not talking about ACC or the power conferences, but the mid-major conferences. These teams, they just miss the tournament, or either they don't get the chance. They just miss it, and then they go to the NIT, and if they go deep or even win it, some of those teams end up turning out to be pretty damn good teams and making the NCAA shortly thereafter. So I mean, I think even if they don't get in the NIT and do some damage, because other players notice that, transfers notice that.
Sure.
Right. I think even that would be, to me, I don't want to see that happen. I like the ESC and NCAA tournament bid. I think this team certainly is a candidate for the top 68 in the country. But I also think if they don't take that tournament seriously, get in and do some damage, get in the Final Four, something like that.
Well, I think a lot of it's going to depend on what some of the other tournaments tend to, how they shake out.
Yeah,
if
of course.
Get some of the favorites knocked out, that's not good for us.
It isn't. Correct.
If you have the favorites running the table, we got a shot.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
It's been a tremendous run nonetheless. You're absolutely right, and hopefully, I can now envision a life where we can, and we will be together. You'll get your ass out here from Philadelphia.
Yes, I will for that. Yes, I would.
The 3 of us will be together. If they have a party, we're going to the party, and we will see that bid come through.
I certainly
Lord
think
knows
it's better
it's on the
now
East Coast. I'm going to make sure my ass is at that game somewhere.
Yep. Well, we have to make our trip down to West Virginia when the Dukes get down there too, and 76 and 7, but we'll have to make that trip as well. We certainly have to do that one. We'll get on the news.
Absolutely. But, Gary, what's your prediction of the week?
I don't know.
Say something about Tuggate. Come on.
Maybe I'm a little bit out of it. I don't really have I was trying to think about that on the way home today.
Come on. What about Bob Kraft? What's going to happen? Make your call.
I think I never thought about it the way Fletch described it. It is funny with that trafficking issue in particular all over the news. I never really thought
he's dead meat with that. That is just
that's going to be bad.
We make fun of it, but that's
bad.
These women, on average, from what they said, have to perform these acts 1,500 times a year.
Think about that.
And I'm thinking if it's a trafficking situation, they're not becoming rich off that.
Yeah.
So this is a deplorable situation that he is.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is. I agree. I'm gonna be a little bit of a sissy here. I don't really have a big prediction because I didn't have a chance to think about it. I think.
Why don't you say you predict the Penguins will be up 2-0 on the Blue Jackets after a period?
Yeah, then I would be right.
Make the call.
Surprising, yes. I'm hoping that they are, given the loss of two studs.
They are
for God knows how long. So
they are, because Lord knows this is not a last place team, so they're awake.
Yeah, and that's typical them too. Both hockey teams in Pennsylvania seem to one night look like they can race to the Stanley Cup, and the next night they don't show up. It's maddening. So,
do you think they're going to make the playoffs?
I think it's going to be borderline. I still do, Dave, but I have to admit I'm not as confident as I was even when they made the Bukestad trade. It just seems like these trades that they're making, they do look like they make sense, but they're just not gelling very well, and I can't quite figure out why.
I don't think people know what their roles are. I think that's which I can't
understand.
Coming late.
How
you can be this far in the season and not know what your role is.
Yep, playing with those great players is not easy sometimes in terms of ice time and everything else. And I don't know. I think Sullivan continues to juggle way too much to me. Just leave it alone for a little while. And if he has somebody gels, but if you have a bad night or there's no shots in one period, he's juggling all the time. It's almost too much. They almost look. I don't want to say panicked. They look a little.
Gorman had a good column today. Basically, he put it in. Had you kept Ryan Reeves, you would have saved yourself about 5 or 6 trades to get this guy who is physically doing what Ryan Reeves does, not as well.
Yep.
So you save yourself a lot of trades.
I still say, and I've said this time and time again, Sullivan does not like that kind of player, and he doesn't seem to gravitate to it, particularly up in the forwards. And I get it to some degree, but the teams that are winning still, Washington last year, even Vegas, other than Pittsburgh, even Chicago, they had some big wingers and some big defensemen. And I just think in that league, I don't think you can hold on to people and tug them down anymore, and you got to be long as much as physical. But if you got size, you grind people down. The Penguins can't beat you that way. And I think it shows. And
well, you got 20 games left, and you got 3 of them against this Columbus team. And Columbus is all in, fellas. They made some moves.
They really did.
So I think that this is a key game tonight.
Yeah, I think all 3 are for their positioning. To answer your question, Dave, and I will leave this a prediction so you guys can get to yours, I think they're going to make it. I'm really worried about what they're going to do, though. I think if they play the Islanders first, I think that Islander team has some youth. They're much bigger than the Penguins, and they're much more underrated in the goal than people realize. But great coach. Let's face it, every place Trotz has been, he's won, including
Coach
a place that never won.
Coach of the year, bar none.
Yep. The guy's a tremendous coach. It's obvious. And every place he's been. And I think if they play the Islanders, they have a chance to upset them. I think they got no chance against Tampa. Yeah. Beyond that, though, in the next round, I just don't feel real good about it. I think it's going to look a lot like last year. They're going to look electric on some shifts, but I just don't think they're going to be able to handle some of these bigger teams. So I think they're going to make it. I think they're barely going to make it. I still think they'll nose out Columbus or Philadelphia or a few of these others, but I don't think they're going very far. One upset maybe. If it's Tampa, no chance. If it's the Islanders, maybe. After that, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I really don't.
I would agree with it.
Shame. But that's what I feel about it. So I don't know if that's a prediction of the week or not, but that is how I feel after watching them. Philly pushed them all over the place at times. Now, they out-hit Philly by statistics, but the Flyers' hits in that game and their control of the boards and stuff like that was much more physical. And I think it also was a factor beyond just Murray really wasn't very good at the end, and the conditions were horrible. I don't know what the hell Johnson was looking at on both of those goals, but my point is that Philly pushed him around, and Philly's not even that big of a team anymore. So if it's happening there, what are you gonna do against teams that are really big and got a lot more offensive firepower than the Flyers do? So
right,
it doesn't feel real good all of a sudden. Now, could 87 or 71 win one series themselves? Yeah, they could. Win 4 of them. Not likely. Not in my view. So.
All right, Fletch.
Well, I have 2 of them. Sorry, guys, I'm taking 2.
Good.
The first one.
Fill in one for me. Good.
The first one is the Penguins.
You got a Busher statement that has to come up.
Oh, yes, I do have a Busher statement coming.
Okay.
The Penguins.
I'm sorry.
Will refuse to play any more outdoor games because everybody gets hurt every goddamn time they play an outdoor game.
Every time.
So just say no. That's prediction 1.
That's a good
prediction 2. And my Busher of the week goes to the Nike Corporation, and I'm sure they're going to be pulling their Zion Williamson edition sneaker off of the market after that thing ripped and possibly took his leg with it when that happened. Their stock took a little tumble over that. What a complete shit show that was.
You're right.
Well,
how do you rip a sneaker?
Did you see the Onion post on that?
No.
Nike fires 8-year-old boy who made Zion Williamson.
That's beautiful.
That was probably the best Onion I've seen online.
Oh, that's beautiful. But, oh, my God. And then here's the thing, that one event, the ripple effect it could have on college athletics, where here's a guy who, and people were paying Super Bowl prices to go to that game.
Yeah.
And he wasn't getting a damn penny from it. And maybe his insurance will take care of it. I'm not sure how bad the injury is and how it will affect his pro status. But again, it brings a whole highlight of the hypocrisy of the NCAA pocketing so much money and these young athletes not getting a damn thing out of it. So it just one shoe rip and just what it's done to the sports horizon, everything that's going on right now. It's phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, on the one end, I mean, this kid, I got a chance to see him at the Pete. I think he can be a difference maker in the pros.
I do too.
He's not just a guy with scoring talent. I mean, he looks for the pass. He can rebound. He's a smart player out there. And, I was madder than hell that Kevin Love came back, and now that the Cavs are winning, they're reducing their chances of getting him.
But, right.
But yeah, that was something, and you're right, and that leads into my prediction, as apparently Sean Miller is about to get an indictment.
Okay.
And the LSU coach, who escapes my mind, is about to get one too. The guy who the original charges came on was found guilty. So I don't imagine that things are going to go well for these two coaches. And I hope this is only the beginning of this, because I've had it with this one and done. I get pissed at, I mean, this is Coach K. I mean, what are you doing? You don't tell me these kids are just going there for free. I mean, there's going to be a ripple down with this, and I hope it is, that's going to knock the shit out of the guys who create curriculums, who I can't imagine that's all they're doing. And,
right.
Just let I understand there are going to be kids to get scholarships or getting scholarships because they're good athletes. I understand that. But
of course,
at least try to give them the appearance of going to school, too. Because the truth is, 1% to 2% of these kids are ever going to taste professional money playing athletics. And it just pisses me off that, you're not creating enough space for the other 99% to get their damn degrees, or at least get their degrees without just writing it on a piece of paper, as North Carolina does. But, I really think that since this guy was found guilty, who the original charges were from, I think these coaches are dead meat, dead where they stand as they bring him in.
And they have them on tape and stuff, too. Don't phone calls, Miller, and they're on phone calls and everything, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's...
And I don't imagine it's just two coaches that they have.
Yeah, I have a feeling it's probably a lot more far-reaching than that, but, clearly they were caught red-handed, right, doing it. So... Yeah.
Now, Robert Morris
I don't know what
the
answer is. There's so much money involved that, it corrupts everything. It's unfortunate, but it does. There's so much money involved.
The answer is to just don't do this 18-year-old thing. Let the damn NFL and NBA, the NBA is actually talking something good. Adam Silver is talking something good about a league where they're going to pay these kids out of high school $100,000 for a year rather than go to school.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Which is great. So they get to make nice money for a year, then they can be drafted.
Right. They learn about, and hopefully there's the development that goes along with it off the court too.
Exactly, because that's the reason we have the one and done. With the NFL, I'm hoping the Alliance. Now, one of the worst things of the week was the damn Alliance almost didn't make payroll their first week after having some decent crowds.
That was
what you do with the seed money? Because the Alliance is what I'm hoping is going to end up ending some of this crap in college football too.
Yeah.
As a minor league, where they can develop and get paid rather than doing it at the college.
Some of the colleges aren't going to support this kind of development type of league. They're going to say, hey, that's taken away from, like some of these basketball programs are going to say, hey, that's taken away from my 18 games, people are going to pay to see this guy. I mean, I'm not supporting their position, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a rumble. Don't you guys?
People are still going to come to college football. People are still going to come to college basketball without these players. No matter when.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I'm fired up to go to Duquesne games, and I don't think there's a guy there who has a shot at making the pros.
No. But the big money machines, though, they're going to have some squawk about it. We may not even hear about it, but they're going to squawk loud about losing some of those guys even for a year.
Sure they are.
I think.
I just...
It's an ugly business. I mean, I've argued with my brother for years about this. I mean, he played it, so I guess he's got a little bit of emotion to it. But college sports has become really the slimiest of all in a lot of ways. Now, the NBA certainly didn't help it with those hardship rules and stuff years ago. And Stern, that's one of Stern's black marks. I mean, he kind of opened it up even further. Yeah. But it's really just an ugly, ugly picture. What's the guy, the big Arizona center, where they give him a couple $100,000? I mean, it's just horribly ugly. Yeah. And you get lost to these big schools. I don't think they're paying one bit of attention to even show up on campus.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, Reggie Bush didn't even show up on campus the one year, did he? I mean, it's kind of ridiculous.
Neither did your boy Ben Simmons the second semester.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of his, period. I mean, he just rubs me the wrong way, everything. I mean, that way, if you ever watch that series, the series, I mean, he just rubs me the wrong way. I'm sorry. I mean, he just does. Yeah. But,
hopefully he won't travel to Florida for a little tug.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Didn't Ja rule or something, get all kinds of grief or something? I look at that stuff on ESPN Plus for about 2 seconds. I read the first 2 sentences, then I move on to the real meat of stuff. Yeah. But,
no pun intended.
Yeah, so, right, exactly. Right.
We'll leave you with this. I'll leave you with this on Tuggate. There apparently are 2 guys of bigger stature than I'm having a brain freeze. But anyways, there are 2 guys than Kraft, yes. 2 guys who are of bigger stature that haven't been named yet.
In the same case.
Throwing that out there.
In the same case.
In the same case, yeah. They haven't named these guys yet. So
what the heck is going on in Palm Beach County, Florida?
I don't know.
Jeez,
I don't know, man. But that'll get interesting before it gets worse.
Well, the question, fellas, is whether this story will have a happy ending or not.
I'll tell you what. It reminds me of there apparently is a parlor in Monroeville that the police busted a few months ago, and you know how they busted him? There were towels hanging up in the back of the building with holes in them. Your happy ending memorial towels at Kohl's.
Oh.
I mean, it's kind of like it's one of the dumbest things in the world to do. If you're going to commit a crime, you go to a place where it's kind of known to be watched, and you're trapped right. I mean, like it's kind of one of the dumbest things in the world. Like obviously you have a brain freeze where you got too much.
But again, you got to remember that a lot of these folks think that the laws don't apply to them.
Well, I think that's clearly what happened here. I mean, that's clearly what happened here.
People are out for blood now for this stuff. So I
kind of takes the warm and fuzzies away from his synagogue speech, doesn't it? That's all I'm saying. I was just lauding the guy for what he did for Pittsburgh synagogues. So there you go.
Yeah, well, people are all mysteries.
He stopped off at that place in Monroeville on his way to the synagogue, though, apparently.
It is the pride and joy. It is the pride and joy, my friend. And they changed their marquee. It used to say, "Let's go Steelers." They bypassed the Benz, and now it says, "Let go Bucks."
Well, maybe that's why the Penguins are not doing well.
I'm thinking.
I think you need to pull in there tomorrow, Dave, and I think you need to have a little convo with them and say, "Listen, this is serious times now. It calls for serious measures. Let's get the Penguins in the marquee."
Well, hopefully I'll be able to matriculate through the shag rug to get to them.
Well, I'm sure that you can watch a little free HBO while you're waiting.
And have a VCR and a phone in every room.
Oh, my God.
That was always the draw for me. Oh, man. All right, gentlemen. You have a good evening.
Gentlemen. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.